Hi, and welcome to part two of our Unity 3D tutorial series, I guess. Today we're going to go over some more very basic stuff. We're going to talk about prefabs and parent-child relationships. We're going to talk about kind of customizing objects in Unity, and then we're going to talk about saving and building projects so that we can share them with other people. Um, so what I have here is just our kind of standard scene from our last tutorial. So if you don't have this, don't fret too badly because we're not going to use really anything in here. Um, so yeah, let's just get right into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a wall, and I'm going to make that wall out of small cubes so that, in theory, we could knock that wall over if we wanted to. Um, each of the cubes has basically physics, so I'm going to be kind of making a wall out of bricks, essentially. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to need a cube. So I'm going to go to Game Object, Create Other, Cube. Uh, as always, when we make something, I'm going to go 0, 0, 0. And now I'm going to do a cool little trick. I'm going to hold the Control key, and I'm going to drag up on this green arrow just a little bit. And with that, what holding the Control key does is it toggles on and off angle snap, basically. So as long as Control key is held, when I move something, I move it in these kind of short little spurts of one Unity unit, essentially, which is really useful because now I know that this cube is resting right on top, and you can see resting right on top of the plane and not above it, not below it, just right on top of it. Um, so now I'm going to give this cube physics, and in order to give our cube physics, we need to go over here into our add component, click on physics, give it a rigid body. And what that does now, and I will demonstrate that, I'll demonstrate this to you. When we hit play, our cube falls a little bit. Pretty cool, right? So let's reset what I did there. Move Y to 0, drag up a little bit, really sink in that angle snap tool, because we're going to use that a lot. So now what I'm going to do is I want to make a copy of this cube. Or actually not yet. Before I make a copy of this cube, let's give it a texture. So a texture essentially is a 2D image, basically, that we wrap around a 3D object to make it look cool, right? So I found a brick texture, and I'm going to bring that in, and I'll show you how to do that. So I have this brick texture here that I saved to my desktop, and the way I'm going to get this brick texture into Unity is by dragging down into Unity and dropping it into the project panel. And as you can see, now I have this thing called Antique Brick Texture, which is just the name of the image. And if I want to put that onto this cube, I can just drag and drop onto the cube. And now my cube has this brick texture on it, which is pretty cool. So now essentially I've made this little brick looking thing, and this is all set to go to kind of create our wall. How I'm going to create the wall is by copying this cube a bunch of times and then creating what are called prefabs out of a certain row of those cubes, and then copying that row and then creating a wall out of it. So the way I'm going to do that is by using a hotkey. I'm going to hold Control and then press the D key one time. Again, Control and then the D key. And I'm still holding Control, and check it out. I drag out this little cube again, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to do that again. Control D and then Control drag. Control D, Control drag, Control D, Control drag. And now I have 5 cubes, right? Now I'm going to make a prefab out of these cubes. And what the prefab is going to do essentially is going to allow me to manipulate all 5 of these cubes at one time without having to select all of them. So to make that prefab, I'm going to create an empty game object. And an empty game object is that exactly. It's just a name and then a set of coordinates. And we can use these empties to do a bunch of different things in game design. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to uh, put all my cubes into this empty so that when I move the empty around, I move all the cubes around. So I'm going to right click, rename. I'm going to call this brick row, and then select all my cubes, and then just drag them into brick row. And now I can just click on brick row and move it around, and you can see I move all the cubes around. Uh, Reset this again. That's not good. Hold on. There we go. And now I've got this brick row which I can manipulate, and the way I'm going to manipulate it is by doing the exact same thing I did to get a wall of bricks. So I'm going to hold Control, press D, which copies, and then move straight up until I have a neat little wall of bricks. And then one more time, I'm essentially repeating the exact same process I did to get the brick row. I'm going to go to Game Object, Create Empty, and I'm going to rename this wall. Take all my brick rows and drag them into wall, and now I can move the wall around at my leisure and manipulate all of the cubes at once without having to fuss around with, multiple selections and that sort of thing. And this is all pretty cool, but I want to do one more thing, which is I want to make a prefab out of this wall so that I can create clones of this wall without having to copy and paste. And the way that you make a prefab is by taking this wall, we've got it in a hierarchy, and just clicking and dragging over into the project panel. And now I have this little square, this little blue cube that says wall. The blue cube basically means prefab, and I can drag it and drop it. And now I've got another wall that I can do whatever I want with. Which is pretty cool, right? So, yeah, that's essentially prefabs. Pretty simple, and just to demonstrate the physics interaction that takes place here, I'll kind of move this wall a little bit like that, and then when I hit play, you can see all the cubes fall and they kind of scatter around and stuff. It's pretty cool. So that is that. And now the last thing that I wanted to show you guys in this video is how we can save and build our projects to executable files, which is going to essentially allow us to move files around to other people. You can email your builds, or you could post them on the internet, essentially, so you can kind of show them to other people without, or play them on other computers without having to have Unity up open to this, very kind of clunky editor interface. So the way that we build games is by going to File, and before we can build our game, we need to have a scene saved, and I have already saved my scene, but to show you how to do that, we go to Save Scene As. I saved mine as just tutorial. You obviously won't get a dialog box there. It'll say, what do you want to save this as, and name it however you want. And then we want to save the whole project. So File, Save Scene, File, Save Project, and now we're almost ready to build. So we go back to File, we open up our build settings, and we see here this box called Scenes in Build. And what building our game will do is it will launch our game to any of these platforms. As you can see, Unity can launch to just about anything. But in order to launch the game to any of those platforms, it will need to have it will only launch the scenes. It will only launch the scenes that are in this dialog box. So we can hit add current, and as you can see, it adds tutorial.unity as scene number 0. Um, Keep track of the names and numbers of your scenes. Those will be important later on. So just for now, you don't need to worry about it right now, but realize and understand that name and number of your scene do matter, because you can use them to kind of traverse between scenes. So you want to keep in mind what scene 0 is, what scene 1 is, what scene 2 is, that sort of thing. Scene 0, this first one, is the scene that will load at the beginning of your game. So if you have a main menu, if you have a title screen, anything like that, you want that to be scene 0, you want that to load first, right? So now that we've got all that done, we just hit build and run, and it'll ask us where we want our game saved and what we want to save it as. So I'm going to save to the desktop, and I'm going to name this tutorial. And to backtrack a little bit, I did select PC, Mac, and Linux standalone build from here. All the other builds, web player, iOS, Android, BlackBerry, all those sorts of things have their own kind of weird specifications and requirements. Don't worry about those right now. Just worry about PC, Mac, Linux. So you give it your name, tutorial.exe, hit save, and then we wait. Our build will compile everything, build everything, wait a little bit, and now it'll open to this configuration window. How do you want to play this game? And this is the thing that you will see when you launch your game. So all this looks good. Hit play. We run through this little powered by Unity window, and now here we are in our very kind of basic scene. We can run around. There's our wall. We got some light. Everything looks pretty good. The last thing I want to show you is what happens when you build. So I have these two new icons here. These two new things have popped up on my desktop, and they appeared when I built Unity. We have this tutorial file and this data folder, and both of these things are required to run your game. So if you pass this off to anybody, keep in mind that you need to give them both this .exe file and this data folder. Okay? Awesome. That's everything I wanted to cover in this tutorial. I know it's a little shorter than the last one, but that's because there wasn't quite as much to go over, but all that's very important stuff. So please, if you don't understand it, please go back, you know, try and retrace the steps, leave a comment, send me an email, any of that sort of thing, and I'll be happy to explain further what's going on here. So yeah, that's all for now.